Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 252 of the Thoughtium Navigating Now Virtual Roundtable Series. I am Anthony Ewing, CEO and co-founder here at Thoughtium, and we go live to you all, our community, every Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central. You can find today's episode and all episodes at thoughttium.com/live. And the spirit of Navigating Now is to bring you leaders and leadership topics that matter most. And one of the things that we just really appreciate about this platform is the diversity of leadership that we're able to bring to the table. It's, some of these conversations are unlike any that I've ever had. And I'm so thankful that you all are enjoying tuning in and adding to the discussion. Today's episode, probably one of our more unique thumbnails. The title is When Learning Feels Like Broadway, the Art of the Immersive Experience. And although we don't talk about Broadway a lot on this show, we are so passionate about designing and delivering immersive experience. And today we have Jeremiah James to help us unpack this topic. He is an actor, he's a creative producer, and he's also the director of The Last Match, which is a unique immersive experience that we're going to use today to help us understand how we can design and deliver more effectively. Jeremiah, welcome to the table.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. A pleasure to be here, my friend.
So you call The Last Match, this is your passion project, you call it a love letter to pro wrestling.
Yeah, for sure. So, as a kid, I grew up in what we call the golden era of pro wrestling. So I was in love with all those characters like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage in that golden era of the 1980s. And, when you're a wrestling fan, you have a deep well of nostalgia. And so for me, I always wanted to find a way to merge the worlds that I love and understood so much, one being pro wrestling and the other being, live theatrical events or live concerts, that sort of thing. And so that was kind of where The Last Match was born. I really wanted to do something. There's also a lot of, preconceived ideas about pro wrestling. And, one thing people say that it's fake. Mm-hmm. It is predetermined. This is true, but it is actually not fake. These people really do get hurt. They do get injured. That's why it's called sports entertainment. And I wanted to write something that was really, a love letter to this world and gave people who may be a little skeptical about pro wrestling an opportunity to come and experience it and maybe cross over into becoming a fan.
Mm. You in one of our earlier conversations, I also wrote down another quote that you said that you typically love to work on projects where someone says this isn't going to work. I can imagine that, merging Broadway and wrestling and a rock concert and offering it anywhere but, outside of, a packed arena, in kind of like the suburbs of a major city, which is where I think all wrestling kind of like exists.
Sure.
I can imagine that a lot of people might say this can't work.
Yeah.
What about it? What about this is just so like, counterintuitive?
So, it's funny. I've always been somebody just in my entire career, and especially when I branched out into producing, being somebody who bucked convention. I've always been somebody who says these are the rules? Who says, where's the cosmic rule book that says a show can only be this type of a show, or you can never merge this world with this world just because that's usually the answer when you follow up with somebody who says something's a terrible idea or that it won't work. My question is always, who says? And their follow-up is usually, well, it's just not the way things are done. Mm-hmm. Well, I've never believed in that. And usually when somebody says that to me, specifically, that's a terrible idea. That's not going to work. Yeah. I feel like I'm instantly onto something.
Yeah.
And for this show in particular, I got laughed out of rooms. Genuinely, people were like, that is insane. Nobody would want to see this show. Nobody would be interested in seeing essentially a pro wrestling mixed with a rock concert mixed with a theatrical narrative. Like, nobody's going to want to see that. And, they also said that it would never work. How would you get actors who have never been pro wrestlers and make them want to be pro wrestlers? Mm. And then pro wrestlers who've never been in anything but pro wrestling want to learn how to act and sing and I literally was like, you never know until you try.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my mantra. So this show, with very specifically, I instantly thought that doesn't make any sense. Pro wrestling and theater are essentially cousins, right? They
Right.
both come from backstage out to an onstage area to tell a story and a narrative. And usually, it's a narrative for pro wrestling that goes on many, many years. And it's extremely theatrical and large because you got to play to that last seat in that arena. So just like a Broadway show, you're coming from backstage on to tell your story, and you got to, sing and perform to the backstage of that, what we say is a classic proscenium theater. So to me, they were natural cousins that had just never had an opportunity to cross paths with each other. Yeah. And I was like, I think there's a way we can make this happen.
Yeah, it's, what I'm hearing is you're creating a gateway for folks that maybe haven't been exposed to wrestling to kind of step into that world and appreciate it a little bit more. I can also imagine this also really feeds those folks who, like you grew up in the golden era of wrestling, have a deep appreciation for it because they know that great wrestling is made of these incredible storylines. Yes. And it's almost like you're just amplifying these storylines on a different stage.
That's exactly right. For us, if you were to watch an episode of Monday Night Raw, you might not know the stories that are going on. John Cena is about to retire, or this is happening with The Undertaker, so on and so forth. There are many, many stories that are usually take years to evolve, sometimes more. Where in our show, it is a singular narrative. And something's always important to me when I am building any type of show is everybody is welcome in my shows. Yeah. I want everybody to feel that this story speaks to them, that it is a universal story. And that is specifically what The Last Match is. It is a universal story about retirement that is just one narrative that never changes. And it is about somebody coming to the end of their career. And this is something we all face, whether you're a school teacher or a police officer. We happen to identify ourselves often by what we do for a living, right?
Yeah.
And when that part of our life comes to an end, the question is, well, then who am I now without this? And how do I go into this next phase of my life? And it's just told through the tropes of wrestling.
Yeah. The title of this episode is The Art of Immersive Experiences. And, I think this concept, there's so much that we can translate from kind of your building of this concept in atypical fashion, almost like layering on different dimensions to it. You've got the wrestling aspect, you've got the Broadway aspect, you've got this universal storyline that most everybody can relate to, both in and outside of sports. And as designers of experiences and those folks that are in our community that are really after creating great experiences, whether that's great training programs or leadership development, it's about understanding how you can kind of look at experiences differently. And one of the things that we as designers here at Thoughtium are so surprised of, week over week, is just how many layers you can add to an experience to make it all the much better if you actually just take the time and you say, oh gosh, this through line actually works. I think maybe what I'm trying to say is that our learners, and in your case, your audience, have far more capacity than we think to step into an immersive experience. And Absolutely. It sounds like you're trying to maximize that. So I'd love for you to speak to, you've got the concept, you've got the storyline. Now it's your responsibility to make this incredibly immersive experience. Like, how did you think about that? And what came from this kind of charter of creating an immersive experience for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a little bit more about me. One of my first shows that I ever attempted to produce, and that ended up going to the West End, I had the same impulse that, buying your ticket and going to the theater and seeing your show is a wonderful experience, right? But times do change and things evolve. And so when I was doing that show on the West End, which is what we would call a classic proscenium Broadway show, just, you come, you sit in your seat, the story is there, and we're going to tell you the story. And I tried to make it as immersive as possible. I wanted people to walk away and from it really feeling like that it was more than just going to see a show. So we decorated out this theater on the West End. We had, you know, sunshine beams coming through. We had sounds of seagulls because it all took place in Key West. And that was kind of really my first step. I mean, it was really just from a place of, you know, tickets cost so much money nowadays for so many different things. And I wanted people to feel like they got more than just seeing a show, that they got an experience out of it. So I took what I learned there and, you know, again, back to the pro wrestling aspect. Pro wrestling is an extremely immersive experience. For those who've never been to a pro wrestling live event, it is one of the few places, entertainment-wise, that you can go and truly be a little kid. You know it's make-believe. You know that, you know, this guy didn't come back from the dead. He wasn't buried alive. It's a story, but you get to go and be a part of that story. You get to boo and yell and scream. And it's actually one of the few forms of entertainment where you as an audience member actually dictate how some of these stories get told and whether or not they change these stories. Because if somebody's being pushed and we don't like you as wrestling fans, they're going to need to make a change because they still want to make money and sell merchandise. And right, that all comes down to the fans. And the other thing that's so incredible about pro wrestling is that it runs the gamut of age, of race, of gender. It doesn't matter. If I say I love pro wrestling and I see you're wearing a t-shirt that says you love pro wrestling, it's like, hey, dude, you like pro wrestling too? It's an instant connection. It's not about what your favorite team is, which you get that in football or baseball, basketball.
Yeah.
But in pro wrestling, it's just this really beautiful umbrella of all of this melting pot of what we know as America come together to watch pro wrestling. And it's just good versus evil and fun. And you get to be a part of it. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to take a show and build an experience in this show. You don't have to know anything about pro wrestling. We have a narrator who's there to take you back in time, to tell you that this is their favorite story of all of their love of pro wrestling, to also educate you on the joys of pro wrestling. And then at the same point in time, you are there to yell and scream and be a part of it. There's no waiting, sitting on your hands like, you know, good Broadway theater goers waiting for a moment to clap. Like from the moment this begins, we're taking you on a journey. And so for us, from the moment you walk through the door, the people that meet you, they're in 1980s outfits. The people that are taking your tickets are talking about their favorite wrestlers. Now, these are all imaginary wrestlers that we came up with. So, you know, we're telling you, you're going down a hallway and seeing old TVs from the 1980s showing these, you know, pro wrestlers you've never heard of, but we invented them so you could come into our world. And then once you are immersed in our world, and I will tell you the funniest part about it is the few people that will come and see it, you know, that are not wrestling fans at all, the first few minutes, they're a little in shock because they don't quite know how to take the experience that's happening. And then by the 10-minute mark, almost like clockwork, they start going, you stink, you're the, you know, yeah, that's right. And then all of a sudden they realize that they are a part of this story just as much as the actors in the ring or the wrestlers wrestling. And it really is a place that we want families to come. There's no bad words in the show. It is really bring your little kids, bring your wife. Your wife can come and see something that she might really love, which is this Broadway story about a husband and wife, you know, theatrical narrative. The kids don't really care too much about that. They want to see, you know, the awesome parts of the high flying and the action. Dad gets to be there with his son and be like, you know, I used to watch pro wrestling when I was a kid. And so we're building an experience because really at the end of the day, you can buy a ticket and you can go see a show. You can go see a movie, but it's the experience. How often do you hear people when they talk about going to the movies? They usually talk about what it was like going to the movies. My wife and I just went the other night and they talk about, no, first thing came out of our mouths. There's a bar in this theater. We can have a beer. This is wild. Oh my God, the seats are so great. Oh my gosh. You talk about the experience. How was the movie? It was great. You know, the movie was awesome.
Right.
And so I want people to come to see something like the Last Match Pro Wrestling Rock experience and just know that from the moment that you walk through the door, you are a part of the story. You have an experience with your family. The tickets are inexpensive, so you can buy t-shirts, you can make your own signs. And even though the Broadway narrative always stays the same, everything else around that narrative changes. Different wrestlers, special guests. It's never the same twice. So you could see the show on a Tuesday, and then there's a new special guest on a Wednesday. And so that you can be a part of it. Because the other thing about immersive experiences is something that I feel personally that we've lost over these last few years with the advent of social media and whatnot, is that sense of community, sharing in something with other people, having fun together. And that's something that's really important for us as we do something like the last match.
Yeah, I love that. It's almost like the modern day medieval times, like medieval times meets wrestling. And there's a reason why medieval times was so successful, right? Like
And still
particularly,
is.
and it definitely still is. I think it's interesting and I appreciate you kind of taking us through the experience of the last match, because it's so much more than buying a ticket and sitting down and enjoying a show. What stuck out with me was the idea that, like, the minute you walk in, you almost have no choice but to be immersed, which makes it easy for you to really escape into this new world, from the TVs that are lining the hallways to the ticket folks. And we say that about when we're crafting and designing adult learning experiences, that there should never be a great experience, a great learning experience, in your case, a great entertainment experience. There should never have to be directions.
Yeah.
And like, especially in the work that we do, putting workshops together and things of that nature, you can over engineer an experience that requires objectives and directions and things to do. At the same time, you can put together, a very complex, like multi-tiered, multi-layered experience like the last match, and it can almost feel so inevitable that it's just natural walking in.
That's right.
I was listening to a really cool talk the other day with Johnny Ive. He was the big designer for Apple, and he's working with OpenSea right now on some products for their AI, and they were asking him, like, what at the core of great design, what is great design? And he said, great design is when the user says, this is what it's for.
Correct.
Right. And so I think for you, what you're trying to create is like people stepping in and saying, this is what wrestling is all about, as opposed to read the manual, or we're going to explain it from the front of from the stage. So there's almost this challenge for you to create this environment that makes it seem so natural that people just want to envelop themselves and like almost take on that persona.
Oh, absolutely. It's about building an experience that gives people the opportunity just to experience it and go, just like you said, I'm going to go on this ride. I don't know where it's going to take me. I don't know. It's like riding that first hill of a roller coaster, the anticipation of, but nobody wants to be riding that roller coaster and at the same time trying to do homework to figure out what it's going to be that they're talking about. Right. You just want to go on the ride. And and so often a lot of immersive experiences, especially in the past, were very involved, like, murder mystery theaters in, dinner theater and stuff like that, where you had to play games. You had to figure out who was in it. And that's all fun in its own right. And it's not to put any of that down. But I really wanted to give an experience where you don't have to know anything about pro wrestling. You don't have to ever have been a fan to come in and truly be whisked away and see why this is a beautiful art form in its own right. And then to walk out with this experience of, a love story, overcoming and looking to the future as we get older, and kind of just go, wow, that worked on a lot of levels. And I didn't have to do anything but have fun. Like, that was it. Just come and have fun.
Yeah. Do you feel as though you're tapping into like a new appetite for great experiences? Like, we're seeing in our work that organizations are wanting to really invest, for example, in face-to-face experiences. They may not have as many live meetings throughout the year, but the 2 or 3 that they do, they want it to just feel so different and so awesome. And I think that's a little bit of the rebound effect of COVID and virtual first. But I'm curious, like, do you feel like maybe you're tapping into this kind of newfound desire for people to come together and share these experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. When I started developing the last match, it was the September before COVID landed. So we ended up writing the show during COVID. Yeah. And I kept explaining to people, one day the world will open up. And I said, and they're just going to want to go have a great time. Like, educating people with theaters is important as well. And these, all that's important. But I really wanted to do something that I also desired at the time, which was just to go be in a room with a community of people and go and have an experience and have fun, be able to walk out talking about it, having a drink. And can you believe that was so wild? Did you see that this, And so I kept telling my team, we're just going to keep going. Once this opens, I'm telling you, I really think that people are going to be excited to get back out into the world and see each other and spend time having experiences again, like concerts and that sort of thing. And like I was saying about my past show, about 10 years ago, I started to feel that, the industry that I was in was starting to shift, and people wanted more experiences than just going and doing the classic theater route.
Yeah, right.
It also made sense from a financial standpoint, being a creative lead producer. When you leave the Broadway area where your average price is $30 million to put on a Broadway show, and only about 97% of those shows don't recoup their money, right? It is a very difficult business. And I wanted to do things that were more producible, but gave you maximum bang for your buck, maximum impact of fun and joy. And that's where I started with that show on the West End, and trying to really make an experience from the moment you walked in, saw the show and left, and looking to do the same with that for the last match. And I have 2 other projects in the pipeline that are literally of that same ilk.
I love that. Yeah. What were maybe some of the biggest challenges you ran into when you were designing this experience?
The naysayers were the first challenge.
Sure.
That was the biggest one. When I think, just about anybody will tell you, when you're trying to design something that you're really passionate about, it's really trying to get, like, the Broadway community was not interested in a pro wrestling show. I mean, they were not, they were like, that absolutely not. That is lowbrow entertainment. We are not interested in having pro wrestling on Broadway. And it was very evident as the conversations we were having with different investors.
You mean Denzel is not going to go from Othello to the Latin?
Exactly. Although he'd be great, Denzel, if you're listening. You're more than welcome to join the last match. But yeah, that is a different type of an audience who expects a different type of a show, right? Yeah. And, for us, that was the first challenge, was really overcoming the naysayers and getting people on board from an investment standpoint, and showing them how exciting this can really be, and how moving of an experience that it can be for an entire family. A Broadway show costs you $150 minimum to go see it, right? If you have 3 kids, man, that's a lot of money to spend to go see a show. But you come see my show for $30, for the more inexpensive seats, and you can still buy everybody T-shirts and foam fingers, and you get to have an experience.
Yeah.
That was the first challenge. The second challenge was trying to convince both pro wrestlers and actors that we're going to combine these 2 worlds in a way that is safe for both parties, right?
Yep.
And at the same point in time, challenge both parties to do things that are really out of their comfort zones. To ask a pro wrestler who's been on TV in front of hundreds of millions of people that, hey, now I'm going to put a band in front of you, and you got to sing, and you got to stay on, not so much pitch, because it's very much, it's like speak singing for some of these pro wrestlers, but just, you got to stay in time, you got to stay with the actual tune. So that was a challenge. But once we had a couple of people who were excited, one being an amazing, probably the biggest indie pro wrestler in the world right now, which his name is Matt Cardona. Matt Cardona was the first to sign on and say, you know what, this is just out there enough that I might dig this. And his motto is always ready. And I guess his wife gave him a hard time when he was like, a wrestling show that's kind of a musical. And she was like, you say you're always ready, honey. And boom, we had that. And then I have, somebody that I'd known for years, I brought on board. His name is Ramin Karimloo. And actually, it was Ramin who asked to be a part of it, who's a Tony nominated, global theater star.
Mm-hmm.
And he had always dreamed about being a pro wrestler. And he was like, well, I really get to wrestle. I'm like, oh, yeah, man. Like, you're going to go to wrestling school with WWE superstars.
Yeah.
So, those were the first couple challenges. And then the final challenge really was to convince the industry. So the funny thing about the entertainment industry, they talk a great game about a lot of different things. They're really good at promotion, right? Because it's entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll always say things like, what do you got for me, Thoughtium? We want something new. We want something never been done before. Give me something new. Like everything's already been done twice, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, here is a brand new, never before attempted experience for you that it's never been done. Never. And you'll be the first to see it. And then the entertainment business leans in and goes, come on, Thoughtium. I mean, which is it? I mean, it's not really a wrestling show, but it's not really a theater show. And it's not really right. So, all of those out there at Thoughtium who are listening, those clients, right? And those are the people that hold the keys to all the doors.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you go to a pro wrestling company, and you go, hey, we'd love to partner with you. And they go, yeah, but you're not really all pro wrestling. And then you go to a theater producer and they're like, oh, pro wrestling and theater. I don't really know. Then you go to the rock and roll people, who I will say probably are the most open out of all of them. They're like, rock and roll's rock and roll, man. But that was the challenge, was trying to explain to people what they were going to come and see, really, and getting those industry, heads and people with power to see what it was we were building and how exciting and new it really was. And the struggle of them still trying to fit us into a box, even though they all said they wanted something that's never been done in branding.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, the concept, as somebody who is probably the furthest from knowing and understanding wrestling, makes so much sense to me. And in a world where I think, folks are really, really craving unique experiences, immersive in-person experiences, I really think that you all are onto something. How do people, learn about the show? And from what I understand, it's going to be in Vegas at some point.
Yeah. So as of right now, we're finalizing our deal with a Vegas residency, and we're very excited to hopefully launch the show April 16th in Las Vegas, which is 2 days before WrestleMania, when about 200,000 pro wrestling fans land in Las Vegas. So we're very hopeful to have the show up by then. They can go to thelastmatch.com and they can look up what the show is. We also have an album that's out globally, if you'd like to hear the music, by an incredible rock band called Sylvana Joyce in the Moment, a real rock band out of New Jersey. And my writing partner, Jason Husa, who, of course, is truly the genius behind the script and majority of those lyrics. You can check it all out right there.
A residency, super exciting. I had this like image of, you guys in the ballroom next to like Celine Dion, and like she's putting on, and like you hear next door like folding tables breaking and
that's right,
yelling and stuff.
That's the goal.
And all that is the goal. Like, what's going on next door? I want to go hang
next door there. Sounds kind of crazy. That sounds like a fun party.
That's awesome. Well, Jeremiah, I wish you and the team all the best of luck. I really appreciated this conversation today, about what it takes to design and deliver immersive experiences. What we love about this topic is it's so universal, right? The work that you're doing in creative and production, on paper could be so far from the work that we're doing in leadership development, coaching, and learning. But at the end of the day, like, we are after the same thing, which is that kind of aha, or that's what it should feel like moment, whether that's with learners or your audience. So we're super pumped for you. And
thank you.
We're glad that you're a part of the Navigating Now community.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to chat with you.
You're welcome, Jeremiah. We'll have you on again soon.
You got it. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right. That was episode 252 of the Thoughtium Navigating Now Virtual Roundtable Series. We want to thank Jeremiah James for just his thought leadership on immersive experiences and kind of big swings that he's taking to bring something different to the masses, I think is really inspiring. And as learning professionals, as coaches, as leaders, we do have the responsibility to really stand at the doorstep of our role and even our organization and look up and out and bring in examples, inspiration, work product that we wouldn't necessarily see within the four-wall confine of our corporate enterprise organizations or our startups, if you will, or even our industry at large. And we hope that you all are inspired by conversations like this and are finding your way to be inspired outside of your own industry. There's a lot out there that's happening that we can bring into the work that we do every day. And we hope to be a small part of that inspiration. If you want to watch this episode again or any other episodes previous, we've got 251 other ones at Thoughtium.com/live. And we look forward to seeing you all again next